Hello again, YouTube, and welcome back to Emergency Podcast with me, Ian Bailey.
And me, Nigel Goodwin.
And for anyone who actually saw our last episode, we managed to forget the introductions bit on the beginning, which is a bit amateur hour, but never mind.
It's because we know each other so well and we just assume no one else is going to watch these things.
That's untrue. That's untrue, though, Nigel. We've got, I think, 12 subscribers last time I checked, which is more than we had last time where we had none. So, welcome to anyone who's been bad enough.
Yeah, and I know that one of them is not my mum because she's struggling to subscribe. Technology, right? This is the way it goes.
I'm not sure my mum knows her way around YouTube either. So it's neither of our mums, which is always a step forward. But the reason for the gap is we've both been a bit ill in various different ways, and you're still suffering a little bit, aren't you, mate?
I am. I'm full of the man flu, yeah, it's as anyone, most people will know, man flu is a deadly old condition. So, but I'm okay. I'll get there. I'm being strong.
And talking about being strong, I think there's been a few issues going on while we've not been doing these. Where do we start on this one?
It's so hard, isn't it? It's like whether it's the Nigel Farage talking about how Keir Starmer's awesome and learning lots from him. That was an entertaining end to the week last week. Donald Trump upsetting Taylor Swift again,
and he didn't become Pope.
And he didn't become Pope. And indeed, we have a Pope, and he's American. Although he spent very little time in America, I've noticed. But again, he is still technically American.
Yeah. I was also entertained by there was a poll out a couple of days ago, or it might have been yesterday actually, saying about who people expect is going to be the next Prime Minister. And do you know what the percentage of UK voters are who think that Kemi Badenoch is going to be the next PM?
I didn't see this one actually. No, go on.
2%.
Wow. Wow, that has to be a historic low.
More people think the Earth is flat than think that Kemi is
significantly more. Wow, 2%. Yeah. That's got to be the lowest rating for any Tory leader in history. It's got to be.
And ordinarily it'd be the end, but I don't think they quite know what to do. There is a real Conservative problem. But I think that, never mind the Conservative problem, you've got a main topic that you want to bring up this week, though, haven't you?
I do, and it's very much. I mean, it's close to my heart. It's close to your heart as well, as much as you are you are lapsed and have moved on with your life from a political standpoint. But given that they are in government, given that they are not just in government, but having secured a historic landslide victory not 10 months ago. I really want to talk about Labour and the problem that they are facing right now. Because, first of all, is it a problem? I mean, I think we both know the answer.
Yes, it is.
We've just had local elections. They're 10 months in, and look, governments getting a kicking in local election results is not a new thing. It's pretty common. But 10 months in after winning a landslide, I think it's unprecedented. I don't think that has ever happened before. It's yeah.
Look, I mean, let's do a very brief explainer to the comment that you just threw in as well. So you're a current and acting member of the Labour Party as of now, but you weren't always.
No, I was previously, for a long time, I was a Liberal Democrat. And again, a lot of that came from family. That was, obviously we're both from the same hometown, and it was back in the day a Lib Dem Labour marginal for a period a long time ago. And yeah, I was on the Lib Dem side of things. I supported them all through Paddy Ashdown, Charles Kennedy, and even Nick Clegg. Although Nick Clegg was the time when the Charles Kennedy to Nick Clegg period was the time when I started to have doubts. I stuck with it. I believed in Nick in 2010. That's still on Facebook, which I'm very embarrassed about. But I'm big enough to admit I was wrong. And and then over time I moved to Labour, because I again I think when they were in government, that was the final straw ultimately for me.
And I did the exact opposite, having
Exactly.
joined the Labour Party when I was doing A levels, and then 25 years of various different levels of engagement, including being an elected councillor and being an internal elected official at various local levels and whatever else. And then I defected to the Lib Dems in the midst of Corbynism. So I mean, so we're now kind of sat on opposite sides, having swapped over. But I mean, the Labour problem. You said, has it ever been this bad? No.
No. I think not in government, and not this soon into government, and that I think is probably going to lead into the end part of what I want to talk about, which is can Labour actually fix right now? Can the current Labour leadership actually fix the problem that they've got? But I mean, let's start with the problem, because again, it might be that I've read the room not entirely right. It might be what I think the problem is. There's more to it, or there's other things there as well. I'm pretty sure the Labour front bench think that the problem is probably something different to what I think it is as well. And for me, it is fundamentally that they are historically unpopular for a government that is freshly in power. And we can talk about. I mean, we've got the evidence to demonstrate this. They have not had a honeymoon period. Can't remember the last time that happened for a government. They have literally come into power and been disliked by a significant portion of the British electorate from day one. It's not to say they haven't done some decent things. I think there are some things they have handled pretty well under the circumstances, but the direction of travel overall has been, they are not popular. They are not liked. And that one, the other piece of evidence for that, which was another poll, which I think I sent you the other day, which a YouGov poll on popularity. Keir Starmer's popularity. He has never been a massively popular Labour leader, which was a problem in opposition. But he is now sitting on -46 for popularity. It's his lowest in 5 years as Labour Party leader. He has only been Prime Minister for 10 months. That is a very difficult number to shift. But what's worse about those popularity ratings is that he is, for the first time, in the negative with Labour Party voters. He is -5 for Labour Party voters. That is, I mean, if that isn't keeping him up nights, I don't know what will be, because that is a disaster at this stage.
Yeah, that's a tough, as you say, that's a tough place for them to be in. Just to wind back slightly, though, I do think there was a honeymoon. Briefly.
Okay.
There was briefly a honeymoon where people were giving them a chance. I think that where they lost that was in not having an early budget. Usually, you're going to change a government, and they've already got a plan for the things that they need to get on and change, and they know they're going to come in and open the books in the Treasury, and it's going to be like, oh dear. But you have to make some changes. But ordinarily, you'd come in and you'd have a plan. Instead, we had this ridiculously protracted period of not making any changes at all, and months going past and basically saying everything's broken. The economy is in an absolute state. And I think just settle this gloom period where suddenly everybody's expecting that it's going to be awful, and then Reeves delivers a budget and basically says, yes, it is. So I think that they've probably, in part, done this to themselves, and it really didn't help where the entire Labour election campaign was change, one word, change. And then they've come in and
there's been no change. I would agree. I would agree with that. I think they would argue, well, hey, the election was in July, it was in the middle of the summer. But again, when you are facing historical, problems, the kind of problems that we're facing right now, the summer holidays are not important. You just you just deal with it, right? And again, by the same token, yes, they had some pretty critical things they had to deal with within the first few days. Obviously the prison situation, which again I thought again, they jumped in, they handled it reasonably well under the circumstances. It was a sticking plaster again, but it wasn't really. But something had to be done. And again, the riots, I thought they handled that. I thought that was a good example of Keir Starmer actually, showing that he could govern in a crisis. But since then,
I mean, he used to be the director of public prosecutions in England.
Right.
You would expect that he'd be.
You would expect him to be able to do that, right? Yeah, exactly. So it's a low bar, but So yeah, I think if that's the problem, unless there's anything else you'd want to throw there, but for me, it's a basic popularity problem. Well, a popularity problem in the age of populism, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the other piece as well. We are in an age of populism, and to be unpopular, very unpopular during that time it's doubly worse, right?
I think there's a mountain of expectations. People talk about politicians like not living up to their promises. Change was the thing. So people's expectations had already been set high, but it wasn't just the normal weight of expectations with a new government. It was a mountain, and I think this is where Reform have been so clever in their messaging. I mean, to go back to only a few weeks ago with the local elections, I heard one commentator summarise it as Nigel Farage going around with Reform and saying, Britain's broken, let's fix it. And Labour basically saying, well, Britain is broken and it's the Tories' fault and we're not going to fix it. Yeah. And I think that's the point where it neatly summarises the problem, which is if change was needed, and it's not just fiddling around the edges, and if people are really unhappy and are looking for solutions and the populists are going at it, then you've got to do something.
Yeah.
And the perception, rightly or wrongly, and I think mostly it's rightly, is that they're not really doing anything to improve people's lives.
100%, 100%. And I think, and I think that leads into the, you've segued lovelily into the, as I've created new words today.
We're from Lancashire, don't worry about it. There's plenty of
these things happen. We're from up north. But yeah, you've segued into the why, right? Why are they so unpopular? There's a whole host of things there. I think, first of all, we're in that age of populism. And during an age of populism, populists are not popular during good times, right? Nigel Farage hasn't just appeared in the last few years. He was around in the 1990s. Nobody gave him any time of day. Why? Because the economy was in a great place. People's lives genuinely felt like they were getting better year on year. It wasn't perfect, but people thought things were getting better. So populists can't achieve anything. But during times when people are desperate, they turn to they turn to change, right? They look for change. They don't know what that change is. They don't necessarily believe in everything that someone like a Nigel Farage is saying, but because he's saying it, because he's willing to say this is a horror show, it's absolutely broken, it needs fixing, I'm the only one who's going to fix it. It's Donald Trump. It's the same thing he did. Now, none of us believe that Donald Trump is going to help the very people that voted for him.
He's the opposite.
Exactly. But because ultimately, people are looking at the Tories and Labour, and they don't see red and blue. They see the same. That is a significant problem. Because most people, we talked about it on an earlier episode, most people don't engage heavily in politics. And so they're not looking at, Labour are significantly different to the Tories. They're just seeing more of the same. And 10 months in, it's like, well, these guys are clearly not going to help me. So I'm going to turn to somebody who says he will, who's at least willing to acknowledge the problem. Sorry, go.
I think you might actually have just said the key change that's happened. Never mind political change. The perception change is, you just said, people see Labour and Tories as the same. Yeah. And in the past, that was an argument that would be used by the Corbynista, like your hard left.
Yeah, the hard left. Yeah.
Right? You're all the same. Or similarly, the hard right, neo-fascist, almost right. They're all the same. Now you're starting to hear it from ordinary voters who obviously were sick to death of the Tories being so grotesquely incompetent during certainly the last 2 or 3 of their prime ministers. There were so many you lose track. But Labour have kind of come in, and what's their solution to it? I mean, I don't know about you, but the thing that blew me away in the local elections, and again, I think we touched on it last time, was they came out after an absolute hammering in the locals, and they're sending out these ministers saying, yes, but we've got these 14 new breakfast clubs that we've just started. It's like, it's very worthy, but in the scheme of things, it doesn't matter at all. And it's like, we aren't listening to you, the voter, and we're not hearing your real issues. And instead, look, a shiny penny. Would you like this? And people are just fed up with it.
Totally. And it's that, again, it goes back to, ironically, something that Keir Starmer said in opposition, right? Which is, I want to put an end to sticking plaster politics, right? And yet, he's not. Again, and it might be he's got into government and he's gone, whew, this is hard. And he's gone down the exact same route that, a lot of politicians do. It's like, well, let's just fix the thing in front of us. It's like battlefield triage. Well, it's not going to get you re-elected. I'm sorry, but it's not, because of the time that we are currently in. We are in a very unique time. It's certainly a time that we've not lived in before, where there is so much broken, and people have given up on politicians. And I should caveat that, because look, Nigel Farage is a politician and has been a politician for a long time, but they've given up on what they would call the political elite, which is the Labour and the Tory people at this point.
I mean, I've got a question to fire back at you, though, at this place, and I know you'll have some other points, and let's sort of jump into those.
Yeah.
To float a question over the top as like kind of a something to sort of consider as we go into those, but I honestly don't know what the Labour Party stands for anymore. I don't know what it represents. Is that okay? Fine.
No. You're right. You are absolutely. I'm glad you've said it.
Having, I've still got some good friends in the Labour Party, old friends.
Yeah.
And having spoken to several of them on the quiet, they don't know what the party stands for or represents either, other than going back to the traditions and, I was brought up in the Labour Party and whatever else. But in terms of what it's actually setting out to do and why, I don't think anyone knows.
Yeah, so I'm really glad you said it, because, again, you missed a segue right now, because, it is the next point on there. And I've actually written it down slightly differently, but I've written it down as Keir Starmer. Just Keir Starmer like that. And it's because, and there's 2 points to it. One is, what does Keir Starmer and his Labour Party stand for? We don't know. And the second point is around, effectively, we have got what we kind of asked for. We just picked it at the wrong time. And I say this because, look, do I think Keir Starmer has no principles? Do I think that Keir Starmer doesn't have opinions? No. I think he's got all those things. I just think he has made a conscious choice, for whatever reason, because of the special advisors around him, because of the style of government he wants to lead, to ignore them and to look at what is politically, in his mind, convenient at that time. And it really goes back to when they were in opposition, right? Which is, Labour knew that they could get re-elected based on the performance of the Tories under Boris Johnson and everyone else that followed. They knew that they could get re-elected if they did a few minor and important things. One was around being stable and demonstrating that they had dealt with all of the problems of the past, that they were unelected when they were unelectable, demonstrate that they were that they had true electability, and that they were, of course, fiscally responsible. Right now, all of those are just words, right? It's like it for most people, it doesn't really mean that much, but when you're in the heart of it, I think you get I think what they've done is they've continued to act like a party in opposition. As in, they were in opposition, they were like, you know what, we just need to demonstrate that we need to not annoy anyone. We need to stay on the fence on most things, because the Tories are going to destroy themselves anyway. We can help push that along. But as long as we just demonstrate that we are strong and stable, there's a quote from the past. But as long as we demonstrate we are that, and that we are not the Tories in terms of being in chaos, then we'll get elected and we'll be fine. The problem is that since they got elected, they've then continued to do that. They've sat on the fence and refused to make a stand on anything, which goes back to Keir Starmer.
it goes back to Keir Starmer. I was gonna, just to build on that. And by the way, the strong and stable Theresa May reference, I think, plays directly into the LabCon thing that we were discussing on. But one of the major criticisms of Keir Starmer in opposition from within the Labour Party, and okay, it came from the Corbynite lunatics, but was that basically the guy was a liar and a hypocrite because he ran for election as leader of the Labour Party, basically saying to all of the Corbyn fans, look, don't worry, I'm safe. I'm brother, I'm one of you, I'm going to do this and this and this. And then he gets elected as Labour Party leader and quietly drops most of those positions, or in a couple of cases quite loudly drops and moves on to something else. So the accusation has been that he doesn't actually stand for anything. But the thing that we haven't actually touched on his exciting immigration speech, particularly because I think the world is moving so quickly, it's almost like it'll just become a point of history. But the one point that I noted from it was when he's talking about, we're becoming an island of strangers. So many commentators have said that is patently not what he believes in, right? It's gone into a script. And you can't say, well, he didn't know because it's his script. But he's put it in there, believing the opposite, but thinking that he has to say it. And I've got to go down this. We're going to be tough on people. So I think it neatly illustrates the point. Who is he? And what does he believe in? Other than the fact that I'd quite like to be Prime Minister. That was as bad as Boris Johnson.
I agree. I agree. And I think, and this goes back to principles, right, and vision and all of those things, and look, it's not about Nigel Farage and Nigel Farage having this great vision for the country or Nigel Farage being believable or anything like that, but he's offering something. He is offering a vision in which, and it's effectively make Britain great again, or it might be easy to say make England great again and call it mega, but that is effectively what he's doing. And there's not a lot of substance there. But people hook onto it when they're desperate. They hook onto it because they just don't believe in the mainstream politicians there anymore. And Keir Starmer, and this is what segues very much into the how does he fix it. It is a 180. It is a complete 180 for him because he needs to very quickly bring a vision of the country of the future, his country, if you want to call it that. It's like, what does Keir Starmer's Britain look like in 20 years' time when he has long since stopped being Prime Minister? What does it look like? What does it look like for the average family? What does it look like for the kid who's trying to get an education? What does it look like for a trans person? Wow. What does it look like as a country? And there's nothing. There's literally nothing there. Sorry.
No. This is absolutely it. The vision thing. I've talked about this in politics for a long time. If you haven't got the vision thing, you might as well forget it because you're not going to make any progress. And while you were saying that, I just thought, hang on a second, Starmer's got his missions, right? Surely we'll find something in the missions. But I've just pulled up Starmer's missions, and there is pointless, with respect to it, as sending out the minister saying, we've got 14 new breakfast clubs. His 5 missions for government: kickstart economic growth. Well, who doesn't want growth? Make Britain a clean energy superpower through accelerating to net zero. Well, net zero is controversial because the messaging is poor. Take back our streets by halving serious violent crime and raising confidence in the police and the criminal justice system. Well, that's retail politics with respect to it, right? Breaking down the barriers to opportunity by reforming childcare and that's the first time anyone's mentioned the word reform that suggests like there's going to be change. And then build an NHS fit for the future, which is a slogan. There isn't any vision in there at all when you think about it.
Yeah, and that was one of those things. It's like when he announced those 5 missions prior to the election, or it was about a year or two before the election, wasn't it? He announced these 5 missions. This is a mission for government. I know the kind of person he is. He is a analytical, pragmatic, cautious, very much. He is the right man for the job in certain times. It's just not this time where we need someone who's going to bring fundamental change. And that vision piece is is so critical now, because it sounds woolly and it sounds like very kind of, again, it doesn't necessarily have lots of substance to it. And I was thinking about great speeches, and look, I'm not for 1 second suggesting that Keir Starmer is a great orator, right? He's decent. He's not great. He's very scripted.
Yeah.
But you think about the greats, right? You think about a JFK, Rice University, when he did, we choose to go to the moon, or his inauguration speech, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, or that kind of stuff. Yes, he had great speechwriters, and yes, he was great at delivering things, but a lot of it was about vision, a vision of America, a vision of something that you can believe in, and a vision that was going to cost a hell of a lot of money, and was asking a lot of people, but they didn't care because they could hook into something. People loved it. And just to finish on that point, by taking a stand on something, it meant a lot of people didn't like him. Right? A lot of people did not like JFK. But by taking a stand, it meant enough people liked him to drive him forward and to drive his government forward. And that's the problem now. And that's really what Keir Starmer needs to do to fix it. By staying on the fence, he's ended up in a situation where nobody likes him. And if he starts taking a stand on a few things, then he's going to get some people. He's going to get a lot of people attacking him, but it shows that he stands for something which will lead to ultimately a better favourability, I would hope.
But if he hasn't got the vision thing there, and he hasn't got the, because Farage does the vision thing debate, and some of the policy ideas might not be workable, or there might not be policy there, but the vision thing is really clear. I don't think Starmer has a vision thing. So if he's now going to, as you suggest, pull one out of a hat, it's going to have been put together by focus group, right? Which is awful.
So again, I agree. I think this is where, and look, I'm not necessarily suggesting that he can, and this probably goes back to my very final point, which was going to be around, can he fix it? Or can it be fixed with Keir Starmer?
Well, can it?
But I don't know. Okay, I'll put my opinion out there now in terms of what I think is going to happen, and that is that Keir Starmer's primary problem now in terms of trying to fix this is that he's out of time, right? And I don't mean this just because he doesn't have enough time. He's got 4 years, right? He's not technically out of time, but he's out of time in two ways. One, because I think if he'd been Labour leader in 1997, he'd probably done a pretty good job. I'm not saying he's Tony Blair, but I think he would have done a pretty good job, because his style of government would have worked for the era. He's the wrong man for the era we are in, which is problem number one. Problem number two, in terms of being out of time, is he's been Labour Party leader for 5 years. He may have only been PM for 10 months, but he's been Labour leader for 5 years. People know what he is. They've seen the kind of person he is. I'm not convinced that even if he did a complete 180, people would be able to truly believe it, or truly. Again, this thing about Nigel Farage, I don't like the guy, but ultimately he has stuck to a very significant set of principles his entire career. He is Mr. Anti-EU. He was anti-EU before it was cool, right? And people know that in that, and they trust that in him, even if his policies are unworkable, right?
So your point about he's got time. Starmer's got time. He's got 4 years, and I heard so many ministers after the local elections all saying that, oh look, we're still early into our time and all the rest of it. Well, fine, but if we look back in political history, John Major lost the 1997 election in September '92 with Black Wednesday, and after that, no one paid.
5 years,
right? I don't know whether it was Boris with Partygate, or whether it was Truss with the economic budget lettuce disaster thing, or Sunak just being there. But at no point during those 5 years, again with an 80-seat majority, let's not forget, did the Tories have any realistic prospect of and I do wonder, and I do wonder whether Labour have already lost the next election. It no longer matters what they do. It's going to be never say never, especially in today's politics. Never is irrelevant. But ordinarily speaking, your kind of gut instinct is, I don't think you can turn this around. And that, I suppose, goes back to the question you were asking at the beginning, which is, can this be turned around under Starmer?
Yeah, and look, I think no, I am struggling to see how Keir Starmer can do it, because I actually think it does require someone with someone who doesn't already have baggage, and he does now have 5 years of baggage, unfortunately, and someone who is very charismatic and very good in that. Because, and again, I hate the fact that politics gets broken down into a popularity contest and about charisma, but ultimately it's important. It is very important, particularly when you're up against someone like Farage, who is very good in front of a camera. He just is. And but I will tell you I'll tell you a couple of things that Keir Starmer could do. I'm not saying it's going to turn the tide. And again, if he is incapable of putting together a true vision, a vision of the country that isn't created by focus groups, that is around, you know, the common man, right, around people. Number one, he needs to take a stand on a number of issues. If he could just start taking a stand on a number of issues, that it doesn't matter what those issues are. Almost, it's just about taking a stand and being willing to take a beating from some people in the press and his opponents and everything else, like the trans debate, whatever. Just take a stand. Because do I think he's changed his opinion on the trans situation? No, he's not changed his opinion. He's just saying it because he feels he needs to. And the other thing, the final thing, really is he needs to take on reform. What's the point in being in government, being a political party, if you are just going to follow the Pied Piper? You know, which is what he's doing. You know, Labour are not the party. It doesn't. Of course, Labour changes. Every political party changes over generations, but Labour are not that party, and he is upsetting every single demograph that votes for him. Right now. And that, again, I am a Labour Party member, a Labour Party supporter. I want him to turn this around, but I am doubting he can.
You know what, I think you're right, and the point I was going to make was there's been this interesting stuff about the Tory party seriously pining after Boris Johnson and bring back Boris. So Kemi's a disaster, but Jenrick's the next in line, and he'd be worse, and we don't know who else there is, so let's bring back Boris. I look in the Labour cabinet and compare it to 1997, and there were some big players in the 1997 cabinet. Who is there that's a big player that's not Starmer and not already hold below the political waterline like Rachel Reeves in the cabinet? I don't know who, you know, Starmer needs to go. Some people are saying, well, to be replaced by whom?
Yeah, and that is that other piece, and there's almost another episode on this. I think not in terms of who could replace Starmer, but I think it's probably more about the strength of the bench, right? It's like, who of these political powerhouses, that Labour and the Tories, who have they got behind them? Who have they got that could replace them? 97, Labour had a whole host of people. They were strong, right? The Tories were not strong in 97, and that showed, and that's why they struggled for a number of years afterwards. The Tories are in that place now. There's a whole, I mean, I have no idea how you fix that right now, other than get some new blood in. There may be people on the back benches. I don't know, but you know, they need to come forward.
I think the joy of politics, of course, events, dear boy, events. I mean, things can change and can transform, but there is fairly, as keeps happening at the moment. Hence the need for an emergency podcast. But I think there is a narrative that is not just in play, but I think has now been set fairly strongly in concrete, which is the Tories are finished.
Yeah.
Labour are working very hard to finish themselves. Lib Dems actually did quite well, but there's an element of, you know, they'll hoover up big chunks of the Tories, but whatever. But therefore, it's reform, even though reform is still only, relatively speaking, teeny tiny, right, in terms of overall numbers. The narrative is kind of already there, and once you get into the accepted political conversation is this, it really does become quite difficult to dislodge it, even if the narrative isn't really rooted on firm foundations, and the Farage thing can be swept away still, and that's part of what we're going to talk about in. I think the next episode has got to be, well, if it's not Labour, then and we don't want it to be Reform, then what do we do? So let's actually touch a bit on the next one about the mission that's needed to try and change. Without it being Farage. I don't know how else you change the narrative, but for me, the interesting other shift that's going on, and I've got to talk very, very briefly about the Lib Dems, because just as Labour appears to be sinking very deeply into the swamp, as the Tories have gone even further into the swamp, there's real clear signs now that the exact reverse of 100 years ago is happening with regards to the Tories and the Liberals, because then you had all these different Liberal groups factioning off and basically being swallowed up into the Conservative Party. Now, from a voter's perspective at least, and an ideas perspective, it's the opposite. They're coming over, and I think you're just going to see next year's local elections will have another big sweep of Lib Dems, we're not just coming in and then being swept back out again. We're embedding because we're actually getting on and we're doing stuff. And that's an interesting thing to watch as well.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And look, I think Ed Davey is. I think he's marvelous. I think he's a genuinely strong leader. I know he's a figure of fun for some of the right wing press, but that is to be expected. But actually, I think he's a genuine human being, which I think is really rare in British politics. Which I think is to his credit.
Touching on that, there's I got sent a link earlier to a piece by Andrew Pierce in the Daily Mail, right?
Wow.
Daily Mail and Andrew Pierce is not normally a...
No, I wouldn't expect anything positive there.
Right. And it is a genuinely warm write-up of Davey and what Davey believes in and Davey's missions to transform politics and the party. And from him, in that newspaper, it was like kind of, wow, something really is happening here.
Well, and maybe that's the thing. Look, it's all change in politics. Maybe it's all change in the newspapers as well, because the Daily Mail are struggling to find who they're supposed to support going forward. Because let's face it, they're not supporting Kemi right now, and they're sure as hell not going to support Keir Starmer. So who knows? Who knows what kind of sea change might be ahead of us?
So the plan for the emergency podcast is we are going to do these on a far more regular basis now that we've had a bit of a sputtering start due to the black lung got in the way, but that's now been swept away. So the plan is to do a couple of these a week, and we can talk about not just what's going on that's hot, and there'll be plenty of that, but we also want to, as I said, we want to talk about the wider, how do we bring change without being reactionary, send all the foreigners home type one-upmanship.
Exactly. It's about, I think you described it in one of the earlier episodes of it's about being able to look at the bigger picture, because you do need, the big vision does matter, but then being able to break that down. How does that break down into actual policy? What is it actually? What do you do?
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm looking forward to do it. We're definitely going to aim to do 2 a week. We'll see how we get on. But it gives us a good chance, and if anything, it gives us a chance to chat politics, which we love doing. So
absolutely. Right. We have run over the time arbitrary time target with ourselves, and who cares? I think it's been actually an interesting conversation. Hopefully, if you thought it's been an interesting conversation as well, and you're new to this, like and subscribe, share the thing so that your friends and your mum can know what we're doing, and that'd be great, because we're going to carry on talking, and otherwise we're just talking to ourselves, and doing that without beer, which is a shame.
Maybe beer on the next podcast. That's what we might need to do.
No,
depends on how the day goes.
That can be the live one that we do in 2 years' time or whatever.
Sounds good. Sounds like a great plan.
Absolutely. Right, let's wrap it up there then. And then
cool.
See you again later.
Yeah, thanks everyone.